This video series comes with a fully illustrated workbook and ISA certification CEU tests. Additional workbooks may be purchased from the ISA or NAA.
Whether you're pruning or removing trees, safe chipper operation and maintenance is essential. We're going to look at some of the types of chippers that are available, and then we're going to show you the things you need to do prior to towing and operation.
We'll look at the best ways to stack and feed brush. We'll go through the proper operation of the main types of chipper. And finally, we'll cover safety during maintenance.
Let's get going.
Although there are many manufacturers of brush chipper on the market, there are three basic types. The first type, and probably the most basic of all, is a drum chipper. A drum chipper uses a rotating drum with knives in it to pull in and chip the brush at the same time. You're looking at here a fan or a blower on this chipper to help push the brush or chips out the discharge chute. The next basic type, and we have two examples of this, is called a disc chipper. A disc chipper uses a mechanical infeed that's powered by a hydraulic system to push brush into a rotating disc. This is another example of a disc chipper with a mechanical infeed and a rotating disc. The third type is something of a hybrid between the first two. It's a drum, basically, but it has a mechanical infeed. Again, mechanical infeed, which is hydraulically powered, that's pushing brush into a large rotating drum with knives. This is a very large mechanical drum. This is a somewhat mid-sized mechanical drum. And finally, down here, our last representative is a smaller version of a mechanical drum chipper. Before you operate your chipper, you need to run through a safety checklist to make sure the chipper is ready for the day's operation. Starting at the back of the machine, decals provide very important safety information. Make sure your decals are readable, and if they become unreadable, the manufacturer will be happy to replace them for you. Check safety devices such as a hood lock pin. If it's equipped with a lock, it should be locked. Check fluid levels, such as fuel level here, hydraulic levels, and include the hydraulic fittings to make sure that the fittings are good and that the hoses are in good shape. Check all guards and shields to make sure that they're in place. In the engine compartment, we want to check fluid levels, including the oil level, and up top, the radiator fluid level. And finally, we want to check the radiator to make sure it's relatively clear of debris.
The first thing we should talk about in regard to chipper operation is the proper PPE, or personal protective equipment. Now, using Bob here as our model, we can see that he's wearing a hard hat, which of course is required for all tree care operations. This particular hard hat is fitted with a face shield, which Bob can pop down or up. And this can provide extra protection when chipping brush, but it is not considered a substitute for proper eye protection. And you can see Bob's also wearing a good pair of safety glasses. This hard hat is also equipped with the hearing protection, and Bob can pop down his ear muffs when he's chipping brush and back up for other operations. Now, we're also going to need a good pair of gloves. Bob's wearing a nice leather pair, loose fitting, but of course we want to avoid the gauntlet type gloves with the large cuff. Bob's also wearing a sturdy pair of work pants and a good pair of work boots to provide him all the protection he needs. Now, in addition to all the things that you must wear as PPE, there are several things that you want to avoid when chipping brush. One is loose fitting clothing, or for example, an untucked shirt that could catch on brush when you're trying to chip. Along the same lines, you also want to avoid any kind of jewelry such as earrings, rings, watches, or necklaces that could also present a safety hazard. And finally, before you ever chip brush, be sure to remove your climbing saddle, body belt, or harness, as that too could present a safety hazard. Now we're ready to hook the chipper up for towing. There's a couple things we want to check before we pull the truck back. One good thing is to put a little bit of grease on the ring for the spindle hitch. This will help with coupling when we back the truck up. Now some chippers have an adjustable length tongue for towing. If that's the case, you want to make sure you have it adjusted to the correct position and the pins locked in place. Then finally, we're going to adjust the height so that we'll be able to match up with the spindle hitch on the truck. Okay, I think we're ready to back the truck in. Now we crank down the jack so that we can close the spindle hitch, insert the locking pin, and we're secure. Now we just need to pull the bottom pin. Now Bob will connect the chains. He crosses them underneath the tongue, making sure he leaves enough slack so that it won't bind when we turn the truck. Connects the electrical hookup, and while he's doing that, I check the discharge chute. Some chippers you have to reverse the discharge chute for towing, while others you can just leave pointed right into the back of the truck. Now, we've already checked the tire pressure in the treads. I'll pull the chocks, then we'll check the lights, and we'll be ready to go. Once we arrive at the job site, we need to give a little bit of thought to how we position the truck and chipper. We don't want to park directly under any of the trees that we're going to be working on because that could be a safety hazard. If we're parked alongside the street, we need to make sure we put out the cones and the warning signs. It's important to try to keep traffic and pedestrians out of the work area. We also want to allow sufficient space behind the infeed chute so that we can stack and chip the brush safely without tripping over anything. Now, if we're going to be chipping brush with the chipper still attached to the truck, it's important to engage the parking brake on the truck and chock the wheels.
We have a final quick check to make before we start at the chipper. We want to make sure the chipping area is free of personnel. We want to check the infeed chute to make sure it's free of debris that may kick back when we start the chipper. We want to make sure that all safety devices are firmly in place before we start it. We want to make sure that the clutch is disengaged. And we want to make sure that the discharge chute is pointed in a safe and proper direction. The brush needs to be stacked in a way that makes it easy and convenient for the chipper operator to feed the chipper. Usually what that means is placing the butt ends of the brush closest to the infeed chute. We don't want to place it so close, however, that it would create a trip hazard immediately behind that infeed chute area.
When feeding material into a rotary drum chipper, feed and turn away in one continuous motion. When feeding small material, throw material into the blades. In both cases, let go of the brush before your hands get any closer to the blades than the back of the infeed hopper, and before the brush hits the chipping blades. You can push small material against the blades with a long limb, or you can lay material on the feed table and shove a long piece of brush in after it. Never reach into the infeed hopper with any part of your body for any reason. Again, with mechanical infeed chippers, larger limbs can be used to push or carry smaller pieces through the infeed. Smaller pieces will partially open the feed wheels, making it easier for the feed wheels to allow the larger diameter pieces to feed. The easiest way to feed a large diameter piece is to leave about 1.5 feet of the previous piece sticking out of the feed wheels. With the wheels partially separated, they can easily climb over the larger piece. You'll be tempted, but don't reach past the back of the infeed. Larger pieces can be cut at a sharp angle to get them into the infeed rollers. Larger diameter wood may cause the engine to lug. You don't want the engine to slow down to the point that it will stall or plug the chipper. On hydraulically fed chippers, when you hear the engine slowing down, push the control bar to the neutral position to stop the feed wheels. When the engine regains full RPM, pull the control bar and resume chipping. Some machines with a feed sensor or auto feed system do this automatically. Material too large for the chipper opening must be cut to the capacity of the chipper. Keep a chainsaw handy when chipping large diameter or limby material. Should the material become jammed in the feed system, reverse the feed wheels to dislodge it. Stay out of the chip discharge area when the chipper is running and the cutter wheel is turning, even if brush is not being fed into the chipper. Chips discharged at high velocity can cause serious injury. Never feed material containing rocks, wire, or foreign debris into the chipper. Anything other than brush will not only dull chipper knives, but may cause knives to break and could damage the disc or drum, bearings or anvil, or cause projectiles to be thrown from the machine. Remember that chipping brush can be hazardous. You can avoid the hazards associated with these powerful chippers and their operation by following a few simple safety rules.
We've talked a lot about safety during operation, but a lot of accidents happen during maintenance. Bob's going to assist me as we go through a maintenance checklist. The first thing that we want to do before we perform any maintenance on this machine, generally speaking, is turn off the ignition and remove the keys. Then we want to wait until all rotating parts have come to a complete stop. Oftentimes we can check that by looking at the end of the bearing on a disc such as this machine, or the belt movement on another type of machine. Once we're confident that everything is stopped, it's safe to get in here and perform at least an inspection. So we're going to remove this hood lock pin and open up the hood gently. While we have this hood open, it's a good thing to notice and check for any excessive play or wear in the actual hood hinge. Some accidents have occurred because the hood, having been damaged, has come into contact with a rotating disc. Of course, this hood should never be open when the disc is rotating. Now we want to get this disc lock pin installed so we can safely inspect this disc without any chance of its rotating. Okay, we're locked in. Types of things we're looking for in here would include wear on the knives, any bad chips or leading edge dulled. Another thing on this machine that we'd want to look for is any deformation, any bending or cracking in the paddles or fans here. Looks pretty good. Another thing we should check on most machines is something called the anvil or bed knife. In this machine, it happens to be way down in the bottom here, and this is not the way that we would access it. A worn anvil or bed knife also can cause very poor chipper performance. Okay, you want to pull that pin, and we'll get this cover back down. You notice that Bob and I are both wearing gloves. We never get into a machine like this, into the knives, without gloves on. Another thing you want to do in the course of operating your machine is just observe how it operates. Listen for funny noises, poor performance. Of course, a poorly performing machine should be shut down and should be checked by a qualified mechanic before it's operated.
By reviewing this video and Workbook Chapter 5, you should understand the operational differences between the three main types of chipper. Remember the basic points for chipper preventive maintenance and pre-trip inspection, how to attach a chipper for towing and how to set up for chipping, know what personal protective equipment is needed for operating the brush chipper, understand the safest and most efficient way to cut, drag, and stack brush, and understand the safest and most efficient way to start and operate a chipper with a mechanical infeed, as well as the typical drum chipper.
This video should have given you respect and appreciation for the chipper you'll be using
On behalf of the ISA,
and the NAA.
please work safely.